Freddie, I do have a bone to pick with you as we get started here, man. And I've been saving this for a couple weeks until we recorded the show. I got a bone to pick with you. Something you posted on Instagram. All right, everybody's getting to witness the beef live. All right, you're gonna find out. You're gonna find out what the problem is right here, right now, live on Legends Lookback. Because I fixed the color on my camera. Here we go. All right, that's fixed. That's good. Here's my beef, Freddie. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
You posted on Instagram that you have acquired your very own Red Ranger helmet. And never in the, what are we doing, 7 months of recording Legends Look Back? In the 7 months of us doing this show, never once have you mentioned to me that you're a Power Rangers fan.
I am a massive Power Rangers fan. I mean, kindergarten is when Power Rangers was a thing to me. So I don't know, man. It just goes back like Star Wars. If anything, it's around the same time.
Yeah,
massive Star.
So you first saw Star Wars in '97, right? With the special editions.
Yeah.
So that lines up pretty well with Power Rangers being at the peak of popularity, don't you think? I guess that would have been what, 94, 95. Any Power Rangers fans in the chat? Sound off. Let me hear your morphing call. I got to tell you, I've been reading the new Boom Power Rangers comics. You got to check these out, Freddie. They're fantastic. Almost as fantastic as what we're going to be talking about tonight. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first ever live edition of Legends Look Back. We're still trying to get all the tech straightened out here. We're calling this the Legends Look Back live experiment here in week one. We're just still figuring it all out. This is the pilot for sure. But hey, you all here with us in the chat, we got a great group. I want to say a huge welcome to our chat. An excellent group here. We got Eric and Cheryl and Meg and Joxy. I just can't call him Jose. It's just Joxy is such a good. We got Wes. Who else is here with us? Timothy, Cheryl. Who am I missing? Dominic. Anybody I've forgotten? My apologies. Trying to make sure everybody gets a shout out here. But we are glad you're with us. And before we go any further, we are gonna hit it with our brand new. What are we going to call this? Our intro video? Like our theme song? You want to do the honors, Freddie? You want to say the words?
Yeah, it's morphin' time.
No, it's punch it! You had one job, Freddie. It was in the show notes.
Punch it, Chewie!
Here we go. And welcome, everybody, to Legends Look Back Live. We're so excited to be making this transition with you. Could not be more excited to have you along for the ride. This is, of course, our formerly Patreon-exclusive podcast. Patreon-exclusive no more. We've come out behind the paywall. We've come out from behind your earbuds, and here we are now jumping out into the foray of live streaming on Twitch. We could not be more excited. We're going to be talking to you all about Star Wars Legends, talking all about our rich EU history, as well as diving into lesser-known Star Wars classics. As always, I'm your host, Jared Mays, and today I'm joined once again, straight from a monsoon, I'll have you know, everybody. He survived a literal monsoon in order to be here live with you, and that's Freddie C. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. All things aside, I am here in the Death Star, which is my second home. It's fun here. It's clean, it's sanitized, and I'm ready.
Awesome, man. I couldn't be more excited for this. We've had this in the works literally all summer. And if you're anything like me, I mean, it feels like this summer has gone on for like 5 years. So there's that going for us. But we've been working on this for quite a while, guys. Couldn't be more excited to be making this transition. I am going to introduce the new way we're doing the show. We've got some changes coming here. We're going to make sure we get these up for you on Twitter and on Facebook. The Discord, we're going to have to get like a whole new Discord channel that's not Patreon exclusive. Everything's going to have to change, everybody. But here's a few major changes to be aware of. This is the show that's normally, not this week because of the monsoon. I mean, it was seriously a literal monsoon, guys.
Yeah. It's true. It's not a joke.
Freddie messaged me at 2 a.m. and said, I finally got home so we can do the podcast tonight. I was like, great, because this is kind of a big deal with our debut. Anyway, normally the show is going to be happening every week at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central for all of our listeners all over the place, except for those of you who are not in the U.S., and in which case, I'm terribly sorry. You're going to have to do your own math. Where we are talking about all things Star Wars Legends. We're on a rotation. We're going to be talking about an old school book that's Old Republic days. We're talking like Order 66 and before, right? Then we're going to hit a book that is New Republic days. So anything during the Dark Times leading all the way into the Legacy era after Return of the Jedi. So we've got this big divider here. Old Republic, New Republic, and then, of course, we're going to hit the weird. We got a lot of weird in Legends, don't we, Freddie?
You can't have Legends without the weird.
There is so much of it tonight. And then we also are going to be working in a fourth show, and that is getting into some stuff that's just topical. So we did the show all about the Death Star. Tonight's show is going to be topical as well. You didn't have any required reading. I know school's starting soon. There was no homework for this episode, Freddie, and it's a good thing because it's been a week. I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a week.
Yeah. It's been a week for sure.
Anyway, every week, every Thursday night, normally at 9 p.m. Eastern, you can tune in and join us. Very excited to have you. Of course, one of the benefits of doing this through, I almost called this Patreon. What's this platform called, Freddie? It's not Audacity. It's not Facebook. Zoom? Is this Zoom? What is this? Twitch! Doing this on Twitch means that you can take Amazon's money. Please, grab that money and stick it in Corey's pockets, all right? No. The money you invest in Utini is, of course, going toward making Utini a better place, and we are making some huge changes, doing some big things, shaking things up, Freddie. I don't know about you, but I was loving some game night last night.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It seems to me that we're just kind of like in this generation, right? So here's the history of when I came in, which was the whole history of the podcast, right? Corey came in, he went to Celebration, was inspired, and decided he wanted to be a part of something, and that started off on the radio waves, just like history.
Nobody calls it radio anymore, Freddie.
You never know. You never know. And then, he came in and decided to move into the 21st century, which is now we've got this video platform. Holograms coming soon.
Holograms? Hey, now we're talking. What about blue glowies? Can I be a Force Ghost? Yeah. If you can be a hologram, I can be a Force Ghost. And you can join us, everybody. You can, if you subscribe to Amazon Prime. If you're paying for those that free shipping with Prime and all that good stuff, you can also grab your subscription to Twitch Prime, and you can spend your galactic credits through Amazon to help us conquer the galaxy and subscribe through Twitch Prime. And I was actually hoping that I could subscribe while we're live streaming tonight, but you know what, Freddie? I've got so much technology in front of me here. It's like the cockpit of an X-Wing with all the switches and the dials, and we'll worry about that some other time. But
lights everywhere pointing at me.
There's a lot of lights. I got lights here and lights there and lights.
So many things are pointing at me right now.
I will say this: you can subscribe to the channel, show your support of the show with Twitch Prime. We're so excited for that, and you can get excited for our next episode. We're gonna do 2-part roundtables, everybody. That's right. You wanted roundtables. We got roundtables. You can have a roundtable. You can have a round table. Everybody gets a round table. Starting off next week, we are going to have Patrick on the show for the first time, doing our first ever 2-part round table on the Old Republic Revan by Drew Karpyshyn. Do you say Karpyshyn? Karpyshyn?
Karpyshyn.
It's a tough one. It's like a name just straight out of Legends, isn't it?
It's a Legends thing for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Excited about that. Excited about Patrick. Show him some love in the Discord, everybody, and welcome him to the show. And you've still got a week. You got 7 more days. All right, 6 more days because we're doing the show on a Friday. If you want to read the book and get into that, couldn't be more excited for him. And, of course, we're going to continue to post the show as an audio podcast each and every Monday. But before we go any further, Freddie, I've got to say a special thank you to our patrons. We
Absolutely.
really owe our patrons for bringing us to this point, don't we, Freddie?
We do. We've progressed a lot, and we couldn't have done it without people believing in us and listening to us and being our patrons and getting us to where we're at now.
Yeah, we've had some incredible supporters as we've figured out what the show is and is becoming and will be, and we've got some flow walking involved. It's a whole thing. But today, this episode, Freddie, is not about it's not about a book. It's not about a character. It's not even about a super weapon. However, that was a lot of fun with the Death Star. Thanks to Trevor for making that one extra awesome. It only took us 3 months to plan it. This episode, instead, is all about an era. An era. I am talking about the Dark Times. Now, Freddie, when we talk about the Dark Times, there's really 2 different things we could be talking about, right? When I say the Dark Times, what comes to mind?
So, what's funny? What comes to mind for me is the dark times of Star Wars in general. Outside of the fiction and all that stuff, it's the real life dark times. And then, of course, there's the dark times in the story itself, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something here, and that is that when we talk about dark times in Star Wars, there's the in-universe dark times, and then there's the dark times in real life, right? So we could be talking about this period of time that's 1984 to, I would say, probably 1998, wouldn't you, Freddie? Or do you think it ends with Zahn and Heir to the Empire in 91? Oh, that's Power of the Force, 96. My brother just gave me my Christmas presents, from December, Christmas, which was 8 months ago. He just gave them to me a couple weeks ago, and there was a whole bunch of perfectly packaged Power of the Force figures. They're so buff. I mean, their muscles are like giving me muscles just from looking at them. It's incredible. So we could be talking about this in-universe period of time, or this real-life period of time, which is this era in which there really wasn't much Star Wars. Today, we are specifically talking about the era that is in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And here's why. I was on vacation, and I read a short story, courtesy of none other than Trevor. I was deep in the Trevor Trove. That's what we call it. That's what the cool kids call it. Trevor was going to try to make the show, but it was going to be 2 a.m. for him. So here he is, of course, for us. Here he is helping us out. And Corey's telling me that we're trying to straighten out all the tech here. Where was I at? We're talking about the fact that Trevor gave me a short story to read, and it was all about Obi-Wan getting into Nar Shaddaa right after Order 66, finding himself on the run from Inquisitors, and it was like, what does it mean to be a Jedi and no longer be able to be a Jedi anymore? And I was like, we got to talk about this on Legends Lookback, especially considering the fact, Freddie, that that there's this huge difference, isn't there, between the Jedi who survive Order 66 in canon and the Jedi who survive Order 66 in Legends. Who do you think, Freddie, when you think about the dark times in Star Wars, who do you think would be like the most significant Jedi to survive Order 66?
Oh, man.
There's really one right answer here, right?
Let's see. One right answer. I mean, there's kind of 2, but Obi-Wan for sure, without a doubt. He's without him, who knows what would have happened to Luke.
Yeah, so you got Obi-Wan, and there's one other pretty big player, right? Let us know in the chat. Who do you think is the most significant Jedi? And don't you dare say Kanan Jarrus. We're talking about Legends here, okay, everybody? We got Obi-Wan. Who's
Spider Mace.
Mace does not survive. Not Mace. Who is it, Freddie?
Who is it? Yoda?
It's Yoda, right. So you basically have, like, these two major Jedi that survive, but then that's where things get interesting. And I was like, man, there's so much in Legends that's worth talking about as far as this is concerned. What a huge difference. What a tremendous amount of Jedi that survive Order 66 in Legends. And this is especially interesting, isn't it? Because for the longest time, George declared this era off limits in storytelling, right? For the longest time, he didn't let anybody tell any stories about what was happening with the Jedi after Order 66. Why do you think that was, Freddie?
He definitely had an idea of what he was going to do. He had an idea of not just the trilogy. Of course, he was writing it as he went, but eventually he had an idea that he wanted to do before the trilogy, the prequels, right? And then he wanted to do the sequels. And it just makes sense that there was so much untapped potential in that region that he could do. He wanted to do whatever he wanted, right? He was a creator.
Yeah, that's for sure. Still. Yeah, George gets to decide what George wants to do, and nobody's going to tell him otherwise.
Basically, that's it.
So imagine with me, listeners, let me paint the picture here. You're a Star Wars storyteller. You've got this massive galaxy far, far away. There's so much that you can do with it. And the creator says, listen, you can do whatever you want after Return of the Jedi. George didn't care. He was like, I've got other stories to tell. You can have that entire era. Create any new Jedi you want. I'll step in every now and then and ruin your plans and make you change things up, as is what happened with Anakin and Jason Solo. Basically made them switch characters, as George does. Walks in the room, says, no, I don't like it. And then everything is changed. But besides that, he said, blank check, do whatever you want, except for this era. Then we hit 2005. Finally, we hit 2005, and it's the point of time in which George says, the floodgates are open. Do whatever you want. It's time to start telling stories in this era. If you're a Star Wars writer, a Star Wars storyteller, Freddie, and George finally gives you a blank check to write a story in the dark times, how do you think that feels?
That's a lot of untapped potential right there. There's so much going on during that time that you could just theorize about what would happen in real life, right? Just how bad would it be if a dictator ruled the entire world? What would happen? And that's what happened, right? Those are the stories that we got. Yeah,
no, that's basically what we're getting into here. So let's get into it, Freddie, as we talk about the dark times. And there's one other major reason we've got to be talking about this in 2020, right? And that is, it feels like we're living in the dark times, doesn't it? 2020 is the dark times, so we're gonna go to a galaxy far, far, far away to experience the dark times, but with lightsabers. Am I right?
Yeah.
So let's get into it, Freddie. How do you think it would have been to go from living under the Republic to living under the Empire? Order 66 has been declared. You're just a regular citizen in the Republic. You've been dealing with war for the last 2-3 years. Trevor can straighten us out later for us to figure out the timeline there. But the Clone Wars basically goes as long as George feels is relevant to the plot. We now are in this new era of what's the same leader, right? It's Palpatine, but everything's different. What do you think that transition is like for the regular, everyday citizen of the Republic and now Empire?
That's a good question. So I was thinking it would remind me a lot of COVID, right? We're kind of in this weird range of we want things to be back to normal, but it's not quite normal, and we're trying to process it. So I assume just it also depends on what creature or alien species you are, right? If you happen to fall in favor of the Empire's ideal, then you probably don't notice a thing. But if you're on the other side, or a sympathizer, some kind of alien, whatever it is, you're probably not having it as good.
Yeah, let's talk about that some. Basically, we've got the species xenophobia. I can't say the speciesism. Racism, but aliens, okay? This is certainly not a good time to be living in the Empire if you're an alien. So think about this. You're a human, a regular citizen, and everything seems like, especially if you're on one of the core worlds, right? One of the main planets in the Empire, it's almost as if, well, there's been a regime change. It's the same leader, but things are different. The clone troopers are now being called stormtroopers, but who cares? No more war, right? There's order in the galaxy. And now we're at a point, of course, where if you're a human, everything's probably fine. But not if you're an alien. Not if you're different. And this is especially, I think, emphasized in the Legends compared to canon. It seems to me, somebody else is the canon expert. One of you in the chat, let me know. Is the speciesism in the Empire still a thing as bad in canon as it was in Legends? Besides Thrawn, there's really not any other examples of alien Imperials, are there?
I feel like someone just said it in the chat, but Wookiees, I feel like, have always been discriminated hardcore.
Yeah. Got a lot of issues of slavery going on here too, especially the Wookiees being roped in to basically construct the Death Star. It's not a great existence for them. So, on the day-to-day of the average citizen, life might not be that different unless you're an alien, which of course should cause us listeners, I think, to be thinking about our own complacency, like our own place in the galaxy. Is the world fine for me because I'm privileged, or is the world difficult for other people, and what is my part in fighting for people who, because of their differences, the way they look, I'm about to start preaching, Freddie, hold me back here, man. Let
it all out.
You can also tune into my my Sunday morning live streams on, never mind, if you want a good sermon. No, the point of the fact of the matter is, of course, life might be on a day-to-day basis pretty similar for the average citizen, but not for aliens and not for one other type of person in the galaxy, and that's Jedi. Okay? One of the biggest differences in canon and Legends, of course, is the stories of the Jedi themselves, specifically who survived the Purge. We talked about Ben and Yoda. We also have a pretty big list of other Jedi, maybe off the beaten path, and that's what you're here for, everybody. We're going to talk about these Jedi. But think about this, Freddie. What do you think life would have been like for a Jedi after you've been fighting in a war, you've been a hero of the galaxy, and flip of a switch, if you survived, all of your buddies are dead. How do you think this would have felt to be a Jedi living in the dark times? What kind of survivor skill do you think you would have? Also, welcome to Wake Up Freddy for subscribing to the channel. Perfect. What do you think life is like for a Jedi who has survived Order 66, Freddy?
Well, the main form of government is trying to kill you. And have brainwashed everybody to hate you.
Right.
So you really have to hide. You have to hide it, right? It's just like, if a dictator took over and you were the opposition, just get rid of that person. No more opposition.
Yeah, that's one good way to get reelected, is if you just literally murder everybody who wasn't going to vote for you. Of course, Palpatine, I don't think there's many elections during this 20-year period of the dark times, of course. What do you think, speaking of Palpatine, what do you think the public perception of Palpatine is during this time period? How do you think that the regular citizen of the Empire views Palps? Let us know in the chat, everybody. What do you think about this? Do you view Palpatine as a hero of the Clone Wars, or kind of like a disinvolved, like the grumpy, old, crusty politician? What do you think the perception of Palpatine is during the Empire, this 20-year period between episodes 3 and 4? What do you think, Freddie?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to imagine that the propaganda mill is just spitting out as many amazing things about him, right? Oh, he saved this world, he saved that person, he's such a good person, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you're always going to have rebellion, which is what happened, right? There's a rebellion who knows, who are aware of what's really happening, and they'll do anything to prove otherwise. Yeah,
right. This is basically what's going on here, of course, is the fact that Palpatine has been good at crafting his own narrative, right? Palpatine has been good at telling the story of himself, and he's good at telling the story of the Jedi, too. But then you've got the Jedi who fight back, the Jedi who hang in there, the Jedi who have survived, due to luck or the Force or craftiness, and this is something that is that's pretty exciting in Legends, is getting to know this group of Jedi who take it on themselves in different ways to save the galaxy when they're no longer looked at as heroes. You know, we talked first and foremost about Ben and Yoda. I do want to give a shout out to, I think, one of the most underrated Legends stories there ever was, and Trevor's going to be thrilled. But this was a short story written by, I think the guy's name was Alfredo Pena. See if I get the name there. The story's called Lone Wolf. Abel Pena. This story was basically shelved. It was supposed to be written for StarWars.com, and then things come up when it comes to publishing, and then finally it was just dropped on the internet one day, and very few people, I think, have ever had access to it. It's absolutely one of the most incredible Legend stories I've ever heard. It's all about Ben trying to get baby Luke to Tatooine in such a way where he's not being tracked by Darth Vader, right? Where he's doing it under the radar. He has to sell his ship and get a new one. It's incredible, especially as Ben's thinking about Yoda being off on Dagobah, and there's no other Jedi left, and this kid, this baby, is the son of my best friend who doesn't know he exists. It's absolutely insane. Besides that, of course, we've got Kenobi. Kenobi is a great Legends story that's almost not Legends. You know, there's not a lot that's Legendsy about it, right, Freddie?
Yeah, there's not.
That's absolutely an incredible story concerning what it's like for Ben to be a Jedi when he can't be a Jedi anymore. What do you think Ben's day-to-day is like? What kind of guilt do you think he has about Anakin, Freddie? Especially thinking about those first few weeks, that first year, after landing on Tatooine.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at a lot of the Legends books, especially the Utini #1 favorite, chat, do you know which one that is? It's. Do you know how many people wanted to talk about it?
You're talking about Paradise Snare or Kenobi?
Paradise Snare, exactly. That's the one. No, man, Kenobi. He was just so. He was trying to get a hold of Qui-Gon, right? He was desperate to talk to somebody. To just he didn't want to be in his anguish anymore. You could tell he just wanted to escape, but he had to do his job. And even though he tried to stay under the radar, it's so hard for somebody with that immense power to stay that far under, right? It's not easy. And I can just imagine the pain he goes through just every day thinking about what happened, what did he do wrong, right? As a leader that he was, he has to assume that he did something wrong too, not just Anakin, of course. But it's just depressing, man.
I do want to give a shout out to Cheryl in the chat, who, when you asked the question, Freddie, about what's the #1 Utini favorite book, you know what she said? She said, I Jedi. So props to her. Cheryl's paying attention, everybody. One of these days, we'll get to I Jedi. I can't wait for that. But, Ben is definitely... I like that you bring up the fact that he just wants to talk to somebody, because he cannot reveal the fact that he is a Jedi. He can't tell anyone, because if he does, it's literally life or death. It, to me, is one of the most compelling stories in all of Legends. And George wouldn't let anybody tell it for 20 years, which is amazing. But once we move beyond our main Jedi, Ben and Yoda, who are learning their lessons, everything they did wrong in the Clone Wars, everything they did wrong with Anakin, we're gonna hit the highlights here, folks. We're going to hit the highlights. We can't hit every Last Jedi who survived Order 66 in Legends just for the sheer sake of time. And plus, I've read a lot of Legends, but I have not read every single story about all of these Jedi. There are a lot. So let us know in the chat if you think we missed any. If there's any Jedi in Legends that survived Order 66 that we've left out. I will say one of my personal favorites comes from the Last of the Jedi books by Jude Watson, and that is the Jedi Ferris Olin. Have you read these, Freddie? Last of the Jedi. See if I can get this up to the camera here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this. Now we're on video. I can show the books.
Oh, yeah. Look at that artwork.
Bookshelf tour while Freddie talks here. Have you read these?
I have. These are the ones that I have not read. I I don't really have a reason why I haven't. It's just I feel like I keep going to Truce at Bakura.
There we go. I have now purchased 3 separate copies of Truce at Bakura since we last talked about that, man. What have you done to me? I didn't even really like it all that much. I thought it was fine. I thought it was average. And I have bought all the... All right, so The Last of the Jedi, I'll say briefly, won't tell you everything about them, but it is a young reader series, not quite young adult, middle grade, you might call them, back in the Legends days. You need like a ringtone of me saying that. Back in the Legends days. Back in the Legends days, we called these young readers, they were by Scholastic. Basically, the idea is Ferris Olin was a rival of Anakin's at the Jedi Temple. They go on all these missions together in the Jedi Quest books, and they hate each other. Ferris is like the perfect Jedi. Anakin's always trying to outdo him. He's like 2-3 years older than Anakin. Anakin can never be the Jedi that Ferris is, and yet Ferris ends up surviving Order 66 because he had left the Jedi Order prior to Order 66. He ends up teaming up with none other than Dexter Jettster in order to create like a rebellion cell that ends up on like an asteroid. They have an asteroid base. It's incredible, man. Absolutely fantastic. Shout out to Emma in the chat who says she loves The Last of the Jedi. Grateful to hear that. A really good series. Are you more compelled to check these out now, Freddie?
Yeah, I mean, you got me at Asteroid Base.
I didn't have you at Dexter Jettster? Come on.
I mean, you had me at you had me at a lot of times.
Perfect. Well, that's a young adult series, a young reader series. But once we move beyond that, with the Jedi who survive Order 66 in Legends, there is a series that I know a lot of people have read, and that is The Force Unleashed. I feel like I should shave my head and look extra angsty when I talk about The Force Unleashed. I look a little bit more like Sam Witwer. Yeah. I mean, Starkiller. Yeah. See if I can find mine.
That picture just exudes angst. Every time I look at it, it's just... I could see him playing rugby in real life.
I gotta tell you, anytime somebody mentions the year 2008, there is one thing and one thing only that comes to mind, and that is The Force Unleashed. But there is specifically a couple of key Jedi who survive and are introduced in Order 66. One, a shout out to Charles, who named his dog after this Jedi, the blind Jedi Master Ram Koda himself. How awesome is Koda, Freddie?
Yeah, I like Ram Koda. I would say Ram Koda to me is like one of those... I don't know how to describe it, but it's like one of my... Oh, I forgot about that. I like Ram Koda kind of character.
Yeah. To me, he's over it, you know? He didn't want any part in this, but the Force sucked him back in, and especially paving the way for the whole blind Jedi trope that we end up getting again with Kanan. Spoiler alert for Rebels season something. It comes up later in the story. And then there's one other key Jedi that survives in The Force Unleashed, and that's Shakti. Shakti herself is still sticking around. So shout out to her for managing to survive, and that's one of the big things that shows us the departure in canon and Legends, right, Freddie? That for her the story's over in canon, but in Legends she has a whole another existence.
She's not done yet.
Continuing down our list of the Jedi who survive Order 66 in Legends, we've got the book Dark Lord by James Luceno. There's a small band of, what are they, like 6, maybe 8 Jedi? And thank you, Dominic, for the sub through Twitch Prime. We need to come up with some kind of a jingle.
A foghorn?
Like a wah, yeah, I guess that would work when somebody subscribes. It's pretty cool that we've got that overlay. Shout out to Ryan for putting those together there for us, though. Have you read that one, Freddie? Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. Basically, there's this entire group of Jedi who are introduced just for the point, just for the purpose of like being, eviscerated by Vader,
just murdered.
That's your legacy.
Absolutely murdered.
One of our ongoing gags in Legends Lookback, everybody, has been, what's the best crazy Legends way to die? We always say, is it better to get blown up by the Death Star or blown up on the Death Star? What are some of these other ones, Freddie? Better to be intact in a battle droid, like in the Truce at Bakura?
Yeah, and then there's the would you rather die via World Destroyer? Or Devastator, sorry.
How about trapped inside the Thought Bomb eternally with 1,000 Sith Lords on Rusan from the Darth Bane book. Well, when it comes to this group, it's like your entire legacy is, hey, nice try, but Vader got you in the end. Excellent book, though. It's all about showing Vader becoming Vader. You know, he's got the suit on, but he still has to actually has to be a Vader. Wes says he'd rather be eaten by a Rancor. I only want to be eaten by a Rancor if it is being piloted by a Dathomiri Night Sister. Because they ride those in. What was that book, Freddie?
Man. We just talked
Courtship
about
of Princess Leia.
Yes,
there we go. All right. Now, I do see in the chat here that we've got... Corey is shouting out another Jedi who survives Order 66, and that's Jax Pavan from the Coruscant Nights series, and, importantly, his master, Evan Peel, with his grumpy face and the weird ears. You know who I'm talking about, Freddie?
I do. and you know, it's funny because, speaking of Corey, I was thinking, how you can't just... You know, there were Jedi that survived, right? And then there were people who survived that would become Jedi, which is like Corey's favorite, Corran Horn. So, it's interesting.
Totally. So Corran Horn, we don't want to spoil his story. There is a connection, however, to Corran Horn's story and a Jedi who survives Order 66, but it's just too delicious. And we're talking about Corran Horn. We don't want to spoil anything for our incredible listeners. But Jax Pavan, his whole deal, of course, is basically he's just like not interested in becoming a Jedi again. He's kind of like a wisecracking, fun-loving, but sucked back into it, always on the run from Vader. This is a series that I'm currently going through. Definitely loving it. Totally worth your time. That's one of the best things about Legends, isn't it? That we get these pretty good series. You know, Coruscant Nights is 5 books. If you count one. Darth Maul Shadowhunter, which I love. Absolutely excellent. As we wind up our list here, I do want to give a shout out to the old weirdos from the Legacy comics. You know what I'm talking about, Freddie? The Dark Horse Legacy series. Basically, like, there's this surviving cell of Jedi who have managed to survive another, 100 years into the future after Return of the Jedi. And
the old weirdos.
The old weirdos. There to train Luke Skywalker's grandson and bring him back into the swing of things. Because if there's one thing you can do in Legends, it's introduce a whole new group of Jedi that are just there to train another Skywalker. Am I right?
Oh yeah, totally.
And one last Jedi that we've got to mention who survives Order 66 in Legends is none other than Luke Skywalker's computerized Jedi girlfriend, Callista. Because if you're Luke Skywalker and you're trying to find your ultimate life partner, why not look for an old Jedi Force spirit in a computer? Am I right?
That's the way to do it, man.
So, on a serious note, though, how do you think it feels to constantly be looking over your shoulder for Vader? Because if there's one thing we got to talk about when it comes to the Dark Times, it's the fact that Vader is not happy that any Jedi have survived Order 66, right? And he is going to be out to get you. In fact, there's a pretty good... it's pretty Legendsy. It's pretty brutal. Comic series from Dark Horse called Purge. That's totally interesting if this topic is interesting to you. What do you think it's like always being afraid that Darth Vader's just going to come around the corner at any given moment, Freddie?
Yeah, that's... there'd be guilt in living. There's no doubt about that. Like, why did I survive and they die? Just the images that would pop in my head of all the younglings, like, clearly they're gone too. How did that, you don't want to think of that. And then, being alone.
You had to mention the younglings, Freddie.
The younglings.
There's the loneliness, for sure.
Yeah, the loneliness. And then that guilt. I can't imagine what that guilt feels like.
Right, the survivor's guilt that says, well, why am I the one that lives? And so what's interesting here, of course, is the Jedi kind of take on their own personalities. Some of them get angry and almost borderline evil. Other ones, of course... have this idea that they've got to be the ones that are going to save the galaxy, but we know the story too well. There's only one New Hope in the galaxy, unless you count Leia. Of course, Yoda says there is another. You get the picture, right? They basically take on their own new paths, and this is what's especially interesting with like Callista and her group, is they don't play by the rules of the old Jedi, right? they basically come up with their new Jedi code. You want to talk about that, Freddie? How would you reinvent the rules of the Jedi if the Jedi Order has been destroyed? Obviously, you're going to have girlfriends now. I mean, that's a given.
And how many?
How many girlfriends? Aren't they polygamists? Oh,
I guess.
Legends.
I mean, Legends. Yeah. So, okay, rule number 1. Well, okay, let's start with how would I come up with these rules? I try to figure out what the heck, what did we mess up? How did we mess up?
Right.
And then go from there, right? Thinking seriously for a moment. So starting there, trying to change some things, right? So rule number 1, we can all have girlfriends, boyfriends, Rhodians, whatever you want.
Speak for yourself, Freddie. Speak for yourself. I will say this much. It does give some interesting storytelling possibilities to see the Jedi basically reinvent it. And this seems to be Luke's big revelation, is the Jedi didn't get it right. So we're going to have love in the new Jedi Order. Also just a lot of mistakes. It is very complicated, and we love it for that, don't we? But I do have one last very serious question for you, okay? And that is this. If you were trying to escape the Purge, all right, you're a Jedi Freddy, he's out on the run, and you've basically got to take on a new secret identity, man, in order to do a better job than Luke, right? Do a better job than Obi-Wan, who just keeps his name, except for instead of Obi-Wan, it's Ben. Ben Kenobi, and he's going to name Luke with Skywalker. Put him back on Tatooine. Nobody's going to figure that one out. All right, but if you're on the run, you got to figure out like a secret identity. Nobody's going to figure out I used to be a Jedi. The question, Freddie, is where do you go, and what would your secret identity be?
Well, this is hard. In Star Wars Galaxies.
Oh my gosh. Freddie always talking about Star Wars Galaxies. I've never touched it. I know nothing about it.
I was always hanging on Naboo, which is probably not the best place to hang out.
Okay.
But it was beautiful, right? It was fantastic. And I was what was I? I was a bounty hunter. Which is kind of like the opposite of what you would expect a Jedi to be, I guess, a bounty hunter. But
right. It seems to be like a pretty common thing for Jedi to do when they quit being a Jedi. Doesn't Ahsoka become not a bounty hunter? Ventress becomes a bounty hunter.
Yeah, bounty. Yeah, that's right. And so I guess my thing I would probably try to get into like the black market of some I don't know, a smuggler, something to keep me under the radar of being a wholesome Jedi, but also, you know, I've got illegal things to keep me safe, like, you know, jammers or something.
And your tanks.
Scanners.
Hopefully you're the first bounty hunter to wear nothing but tank tops.
Yeah, exactly. I have to wear tank tops. Yeah.
That'd be a pretty good way for them to figure you out. Let us know in the comments, everybody, what's your answer? Where would you go if you're a Jedi trying to survive the Purge, trying to escape from Vader for 20 years? Where do you go, and what's your secret identity? All right, I'm thinking about this, and first I was going to say maybe like a bartender on Nar Shaddaa. Just going to like the seediest place in the galaxy, just get in the thick of it, get to know some folks. I'd be like preaching little sermons over the counter, trying to help them improve their lives. I'd be telling them all to go home and rethink their lives. That's a pretty good way to get caught. My life was changed when I met the bartender, and he told me to go home and rethink my life. The Vader's like, really? I know a Jedi who used to do that. So I was like, maybe that one's not going to check out. I was thinking maybe I would just grow a big beard. Like, not cut my hair anymore. Just let it fly, man. I'd move to Kashyyyk, hang out in the tree houses with the Wookiees. Would if you're going to hang out in a treehouse in Star Wars, would you hang out with the Wookiees or the Ewoks?
Oh, man. Definitely not the Wookiees. And that's just because the chances of me surviving on Kashyyyk are very low as a Jedi.
Why is that? Oh, because the Empire is going to enslave all the Wookiees, and you're going to have to get involved and save them?
Yeah, you could just hang out on the moon of Endor and just chill and you know, maybe get killed by the Ewoks or...
They're going to eat your brains, man. They're going to eat your brains. I mean, how many times would you have to hear Yub Nub before you are ready to eat your own brains? That's the question. All right, let us know in the chat, everybody. Hit me with a 1 in the chat if you choose the Wookiees if you're going to hang out with the Wookiees in the trees after Order 66. Hit me with a 2 if you're going to go with Ewoks. 1 for Wookiees, 2 for Ewoks. In the meantime, let me read some of the answers from our incredible listeners here. Cheryl says she'd be a gambler. And as a Jedi, you'd be pretty good at it. That seems unethical to me, Cheryl. I'm going to say, like, maybe that seems sleazy. Okay, good answer, though. Juliana says Freddy wants to be part of the Ghost Crew in your secret identity. That's off limits here. No Ghost Crew in Legends. Sorry. Who else we got here? Wes says he would be a Tusken Raider not on Tatooine. Now that is a good answer. Here's the question, Wes. Would you speak Galactic Basic, or would you just kind of like make the weird noises, the grunts and growls that the Tusken Raiders are always making? So we got a lot of ones in the chat, a lot of Wookiee fans, and Cheryl just fully admits to it. Hey, it would be an unethical choice, but it's a choice nonetheless. Man, this has been a lot of fun. Let me ask you this, Freddie, as we close out. Out of all the stories we've talked about today, we've talked about Coruscant Knights and Force Unleashed, Last of the Jedi. What else we got here? Legacy Comics. We got the Planet of Twilight, Callista Trilogy. Man, some good Legends titles here.
Yeah, those are all beautiful. All of them.
Out of all of these, which would you pick? Which are your favorites out of all the stories we've talked about today?
I do like Coruscant Knights. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick with that one because that was one of the first series I read after Truce at Bakura, and it just brings back a lot of good memories. I
like the way you say Bakura, Freddie. I say Bakura like a Southerner. Like I just want me and Wes saying Bakura on a loop, but instead you're like Bakura. You say it you say it with a lot of finesse, man. I love that. I think my answer would be The Force Unleashed. I've got a real soft spot for it. I was in high school as that was coming out. I remember getting Game Informer magazine for a couple years there with my my GameStop subscriptions, and I was just like, we got Rancors. You can throw stormtroopers with the Force. There's Force lightning. Vader's killing Wookiees. But honestly, I actually really like the story there. I like the crew. I like the droid. What's the droid in The Force Unleashed? He can turn into other things. Somebody let me know in the chat. That's the beauty of doing this live. Excited to hear your answer.
I think the voice was David Collins who did the music.
I'm so close. Proxy. It's Proxy.
Proxy. Yeah.
Hopefully I beat the chat to that. Just for the record, I got it before anybody said. So I really like that. And fun fact with The Force Unleashed, one of 5 Star Wars stories ever to hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Whether it was deserving or not, you got the video game going for you, but the book itself reached #1 on the list. Well, everybody, that does it for this week. We have loved hanging out with you. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to switch over to our other scene here as long as our audio is working. Beautiful list of scrolling patrons. Thank you so much, of course, to our patrons who have brought us to this point. I do want to say next week, join us because you know him and you love him. He's alienating to both the Jedi and the Sith alike. He's walked the line between light and dark, leading an army of mutiny against the Mandalorians. He became Dark Lord of the Sith, eventually saves the galaxy. Next week, we are talking about our first ever 2-part roundtable discussion of the Old Republic Revan. Of course, with our special guest, Patrick from Kanja Book Club. That's a mouthful. Kanja Book Club. Say that 5 times fast. I want to say thank you, everybody, for joining us on our live show here. For all of our listeners checking out the audio, thank you, of course, for your continued listenership